Alright guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Psychic Medium Raymond Guzman, and today I'm going to be doing a celebrity psychic mediumship reading on Anthony Bourdain. This was a highly requested video, very painful for me to do. This particular video is so recent to the passing of Mr. Bourdain. I was a fan, and I'm still a fan, and I would watch all his shows on the Travel Channel. So, um, it was just very difficult. I would have done this video a few days, after his passing, but I wanted to give it some time before I actually focused in on his energy and everything that went on. Now, the first thing that I will say is that when I first saw the story that he had taken his life, committed suicide, that basically two celebrities, Kate Spade, 1 week, and then, a couple of days later, Anthony Bourdain, you kind of think, and they're both suicide, what is going on? So, logically, a lot of people will shift into the thinking, and I even for a moment thought perhaps this was not, correct. This wasn't a suicide, but then, I tune into the soul energy and everything, that I'm getting psychically. And I will explain what I get. You don't have to agree. Please know that I'm doing this in a very respectable manner, and these are just my opinions. And again, you don't have to agree, but this is the insight that I'm getting. So when I tune into Anthony Bourdain's soul, what I see is that he had a very difficult life. Yes, he had success in media, in his shows, in his documentaries, everything that he did, basically he turned it into gold. But, his life, two marriages, relationships that here and there that didn't work out. I also feel like he would have, gone through some alcoholism, suffering from alcohol, just constantly resorting to it to kind of numb his pain. I do get that he would have also, at one point, would have been turned to substances as well. I do get that his soul was not in a good place, and he was very much stuck in almost like in a 3D, a third dimension type of consciousness, where he was able to see certain things. Yes, he had some spirituality, and he would shift into 3D and 4D state of consciousness, but for the most part, I do get that he was suffering depression, and he was just not in a good state of mind when his passing would have occurred. Um, I do get that, he had darker periods in his life where he would have contemplated um, suicide before, but this was something that he kind of maybe kept more to himself. But I do get that he, for the most part, did feel a lot of loneliness, even though he was surrounded by a lot of people and a lot of beautiful women, and people found him, very intriguing. There was an inner battle between his shadow self and his light self. So there was just a lot that was going on in his mind, and I feel like he was at a point in his life where, he just would say anything that was on his mind. He didn't care. He didn't have a filter, so to speak. What we saw is what we got. That was the real Anthony Bourdain. But deep in his mind, I feel like the last couple of days leading up to this, there was a lot of different things going on in his life, a lot of stress. I feel like even though he lived his life the way that he would have liked to, he also felt, his soul felt like when he was here in the physical world that there was a lot of people calling the shots for him. And he didn't like structure and authority. He was more of a person who liked to be more carefree, more, uncontrolled by the system or by a person. And when you're working for, your career, and you're working for a television network, there's a lot of demands that have to be done, a lot of press conferences, you know, appearances, interviews, and radio, and he did it all. He did all of that. And I feel like, he was at a point in his life where he was just like, this is just too much. It's overwhelming. His last few hours, what I'm getting from his soul is that it was just overwhelming. And there was a lot of things going on other than that as well, and I'll get into that in a minute. So this kind of led him to the decision of his soul exiting, getting ready to exit. This was his choice. So yes, I do feel like this was definitely a suicide. There was no foul play. But when I first heard it, without even tuning in, the first thing you get is that shock value, and you start thinking the worst, well, it's foul play. But when I actually did tune into it, I do get that he did, he would have done this to himself, and it's a very sad thing for us to not understand. But for him, he didn't see it in that moment as something. He saw it more of as an escapism, getting away from this reality. And I really don't feel like he was in a good place to even know what he was really doing. He just did it, you know. So I'm going to get into the next slide here. Now, this was his relationship with Italian actress, I believe. Her name is Asia Argento, and they had a relationship for quite some time. I do feel like there was a lot of people that were close to Anthony, or who were associated with him in some kind of way, that knew him, good friends, and that would have, saw um, certain things or aspects of this relationship that were more, what's the word I'm looking for? One-sided more than anything, and benefiting one person more than the other. Now, you know, when I tune into people's souls, I'm not just tuning into their energy, but the soul. What I get, and again, please know that I'm not being biased. This is coming from directly from spirit. I'm channeling, so this is what I get. Now with Asia, she tends to stay more on the darker side of her energy, and I'm not, trying to talk bad about her. This is just what I see from a psychic perspective. So I get that her soul is a little conflicted. She kind of vibrated at almost at the same level as Anthony, but I feel when I dig deeper into her soul, it's much more darker. I feel like her way of loving is almost like a twisted kind of love in some respects, and I feel like she tried to find that love for him, but for some reason I don't feel like their life paths would have worked out, and they wouldn't have been something long term. I get with her, weeks before that, she would have like created distance once in a while with Anthony. I also get that she was maybe in talking to somebody else as well. And I get that, eventually she was going to break up with him, even though this may not be something, people will not agree with. Funny enough, when I was getting photographs to use in this presentation, I came across one where they photographed her with a French reporter a few days prior to Anthony's passing. Did Anthony see this photograph? I would say yes. He would have known. If he didn't see it, he would have still known that she was wanting to. I feel like their relationship was rocky towards the end. There was a lot of I think he fell madly in love with her, but I don't feel like the feelings were reciprocated. And I feel like, again, her energy was very erratic. She didn't know maybe how to hurt. She didn't want to hurt him. So I'm not blaming her. There's no blame in this, because we are ultimately responsible for our own actions. So please do not listen to this video and pass blame on Asia, because again, she regardless of what I see in her soul, she still is a beautiful soul. Everybody has a dark and light side. So I'm not, talking bad about her. I'm just saying what I feel. When I refer to a dark soul, more dark energy, I feel like she has a lot of pain behind that. And it's molded and shaped her into the person that she is now. And I feel like, she can't love the same way or respond to love the same way that perhaps Anthony would have wanted, and would have desired. I also feel like with him, he didn't want to get married again. He was looking and exploring the option of having a sustainable and healthy relationship, but they were almost at the same kind of level, because I feel like he, also had in his previous time, in his life after his divorce, he had certain relationships that he would have been in that would have been short-lived and not worked out. But I do feel for the most part that in her soul, even though, she has a lot of respect for Anthony and love for him, even though he's passed, I feel like she wasn't planning on having a long-term, at least I don't see that, in her life path. and her soul, it didn't seem like it was going to be a long-term alignment with his energy and with his soul. I actually get that she would have been conflicted and maybe had feelings for other people, and at some point this was going to erupt, and I feel like this is what happened. I feel like there were some conversations that were exchanged between her and Anthony, and he took it in a certain way. He was very vulnerable in that, in the sense that I feel like he felt lonely, and he didn't want to lose her. And I feel like they had a conversation, where she told him, how she had felt, and this, led him to making his decision of what he wanted to do. I do feel like there's now in retrospect, she is going through a period of adjustment, and she is putting a lot of blame on herself, even though she knows that she's not responsible, and friends are telling her that she's not responsible for his passing. I do feel like her soul is agonizing, and I really feel for her. This is not going to be something that she recovers from very quickly. It's going to take a long time, for her soul to get back to where it is. I don't blame her for for his passing, and neither should anyone else, because we're not perfect. We all have, we have to follow our heart, and I feel like her heart was not to be long term with Anthony for whatever reason. She's young. There was a big age difference, a big gap in age, and not just that, but I feel like she was more evolving and trying to come into her own self, and realize what she wanted out of life. And I feel like Anthony didn't want to control her. He wanted her to be her own person, but at the same time, there was some jealousy going on. He would have been kind of protective of her, especially since they did have a lot in common. But I feel like he was more invested in the relationship, and than perhaps than he even realized himself. And interestingly enough, I do get that he thought about first, in his mind. I'm getting that this is what I'm trying to figure out right now, because I get that he would have had some substances in his body, but the toxicology report states that he didn't. But I feel like that is maybe out of due to respect for his passing. They don't want to reveal this, in respect to his family, his daughter, or his family. I just don't get that he would have had. I mean, I get that he would have had some kind of substance in his body that the press is not revealing, maybe due to a disclosure agreement. I do feel like his mind wasn't in the right sense when he did this, and I do get that there was depression. Definitely, I get there was alcohol in his system, along with substances like pills. I feel like when he was led to this decision, he thought about perhaps just taking a bottle of pills, and then he thought about, maybe not trying to feel all of the pain, and he resorted to, the method that I'm not going to say what he did. Y'all know. For those of you that don't, you can research it and find out how he passed. But due to respect, I don't want to, even go there and say what he did, because it's a very sensitive subject. Um, I do get that, now she will be finding someone else. There is true love out there for her, and I feel like Anthony his soul will always be connected to her from the other side, and he will support, her moving on. But again, I feel like she is going to go through a lot of darker periods right now, in the next year or two, and it's going to be something that will always reverberate, in her brain and her soul. She's always going to have that feeling of connection to Anthony. But I do get that Anthony, is still here earthbound. I feel like his soul hasn't moved on yet, completely. I feel like he's just waiting, he's waiting, and there's still some unfinished business. I feel like it has to do more with, everything with his family, and with Asia. He's just wanting to make sure that she will be okay. So he's very much protecting her from the other side, even though he's still her earthbound. But I feel like he will be, transitioning. What I found odd also is they did say in the media that his body was cremated. You know, so I feel like, you know, it's just so weird. I know that he was in France and that's not his native, you know, country, that the body, you know, but I feel like it was for preservation of, the body would have already been decomposing, you know, because it was a week later, I believe, when they did that. But I just feel like, you know, the cremation thing was just a little, it was a little odd. I mean, I feel like, you know, they would have probably um, speculated a little bit more, you know. It's just, it's weird that I get that. And I feel like from Anthony's soul perspective, that that's kind of weird too. That I don't know. I just get like something is not, you know, connecting with the cremation of his body there in France. And I feel like this is not necessarily foul play, but it was more like a hasteful decision that was made. And the family would have agreed to it, I would have imagined. You know, I get that they would have, you know, agreed to this. So it's just a very sad situation. My, you know, final note that I'm going to leave this on: if you know anyone who is suicidal, you know, or they present symptoms of suicide, be there for them, talk to them, get to know them, and try to help them, you know, in some kind of way, even if it's anonymous. You know, call someone to help them. If you know a family member, let them know what you picked up on. This is so serious because we see so many people, so many celebrities, and not just celebrities, but everyday people who are going through struggles, you know, with life in general. You know, they've been struck with homelessness. They're gay, lesbian, you know, they're not accepted. People who feel like they're being bullied and they're not accepted. If you know someone out there who needs help, call the national, give them the national suicide number. Try to help them. A lot of these people don't want help when they're going through this, but they need someone to talk to. And I feel like this is what where Anthony couldn't talk to. He wasn't the type of guy to, you know, hey, you know, I'm thinking about this, or these are my emotions. He was void of his emotions and his emotional self. He was more of the manly man, you know, like real just rugged, you know, on the exterior, and the interior, you know, I feel like he was his soul was shattering into pieces, but he couldn't like verbalize this, you know, to people without feeling like he was going to be judged, and he didn't want sympathy from anyone either. So I feel like this is why he took that final decision to do what he did. So let's just pray for his soul and pray for the family and pray for, you know, everyone out there that is going through suicidal thoughts, or has gone through suicide. It's a very real subject. It's something that, you know, some people, their souls are vibrating, like I said, at a 3D level, and they just can't cope with the earth moving into a 5D state of consciousness. And with love, a lot of people don't love themselves enough, you know, to experience true love. So let's just pray for people and send light out into the world. I want to thank you for tuning in. If you did like this video, you know, please give it a thumbs up. If you would like to follow me on Facebook and Instagram, you can follow me. And if you would like to set up a private reading with me, you can go to my website. That's www.raymondguzman.net/shop. Blessings and love and light to each and every one of you.